This is the Dogs on the Hill podcast with your host, Reeves Fisackerly. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Dogs on the Hill podcast. I'm your host, Reeves Fisackerly. It is August 6th, 2023, and I was going to just do some updates on the MLB since in our last episode we were at the All-Star break, kind of talk about where we are at this point in the season, where we are at this point in the summer, since MLB is really our main sport that's going on right now. But then the Pac-12 decided to blow up. So here we are, and I think I'm going to take this episode to talk about all of the realignment that has happened in the last few days, catch you up, and just kind of inform you of what we are witness to right now in the world of college sports. So on July 27th, 2023, the Board of Regents at the University of Colorado announced that the Buffaloes would be leaving the Pac-12 and would return to the Big 12. They would begin competing in the Big 12 effective the 2024-2025 school year athletic season. This was huge news, but for some, not necessarily unexpected. There had been hints and suggestions that Colorado could potentially return to the Big 12 in the foreseeable future. People were just caught off guard by the timing, given that the Pac-12 had not had its meeting about its new media deal, its new broadcasting rights situation. But okay, moving on, the Pac-12 is just going to survive with 9 teams, I guess. Well, on August 1st, George Kliavkov, who is the commissioner of the Pac-12, presented the new media broadcasting rights deal to the conference. These were board members of the conference and athletic directors. Now, it's been reported several times what this new deal is, but essentially, Apple would be the league's primary distributor. Now, this is just me assuming, but I would have to say that new media deal probably rubbed some people the wrong way, given that Apple would have these games on a streaming service, Apple TV Plus. This is something that not all of your viewers are going to have access to because it is a subscription that you have to pay for separately than cable or whatever you're using. So thus, rather than having the Pac-12 on Fox, having a nationally broadcasted game, you would be able to watch it, but you would have to pay for a separate streaming service to do so. There's another wall you're blocking off a pretty large portion of viewers. So 2 days later, on August 3rd, the University of Arizona's Board of Regents, they held a meeting on the possibility of leaving the Pac-12 for the Big 12. Now, when I started writing this script, their decision had not been made publicly, but it was expected that they would join the Big 12 because the conference already accepted them as members. Well, guess what? Arizona is going to the Big 12. That became public information. So that's 2 teams already definitely leaving the conference, and they're both leaving for the same conference. That's a lot to chew on. But don't worry, there's plenty more because the Big Ten got in on the action. The day before this, on August 2nd, the Big Ten presidents held a meeting to discuss the possible addition of Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal to the conference. The Big Ten already has 14 teams. With the inclusion of USC and UCLA, it jumps up to 16. So this meeting was going to potentially bring the Big Ten to 20 teams. Now we're going to jump back to August 3rd. While Arizona's Board of Regents was discussing possibly leaving the leaving the Pac-12, the University of Washington's Board of Regents did the same, except obviously talking about the possibility of joining the Big Ten. All of that being said, the next morning, August 4th, there's a report that comes out that says Oregon and Washington, it looks like the discussions of them leaving the Pac-12 for the Big Ten have lost momentum and kind of slowed down. Now, this would have been huge for the Pac-12 because at the time, Oregon and Washington were most definitely the conference's flagship programs. But no. Only hours after this report came out, Oregon and Washington made it public that they would indeed be leaving the Pac-12 for the Big Ten. They would begin competition in the Big Ten in the 2024 season, joining UCLA and USC. So much for that. So here we are in a matter of hours having the Pac-12 lose 3 members. Last summer, after UCLA and USC pretty much shocked everybody with the announcement that they would be leaving the Pac-12 for the Big Ten, Kliavkov went on record saying that he didn't expect any other members in the conference to leave. He was wrong once, Colorado left. He was wrong twice, Oregon and Washington leaving. But get this, he was proven wrong a third time. Arizona State and Utah were officially offered membership in the Big 12 and accepted it. So get this, in a matter of weeks, really 1 to 2, the Pac-12 lost 5 members and only now has 4 remaining. Those are Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State. This was one of the craziest 24-hour spans I have experienced in quite some time. This is the third year in a row, the third summer in a row, that conference realignment in college sports has been a topic of discussion. In 2021, Texas and Oklahoma announced that they would leave the Big 12 for the SEC. In 2022, I've already said this, UCLA and USC announced that they would leave the Pac-12 for the Big 10. And in 2023, Colorado leaves the Pac-12 for the Big 12, Arizona State, and Utah join them, and Oregon and Washington leave for the Big 10, all of those from the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is collapsing right in front of our eyes, going up in flames. This brings me to another matter to discuss, and that's the new CFP system. In one summer, it's been absolutely destroyed. This entire new 12-team playoff that's going to be implemented in the 24-25 season is going to have to be completely reworked and remodeled before it even debuts. So in this new format, the 6 highest ranked conference champions receive automatic bids. So in other words, your 5 Power 5 conference champions and whoever the committee deems to be the best group of 5 champion. Those are your seeds 1 through 6. Those next 6 spots are at-large bids or just your next 6 best teams. So basically, the Pac-12 champion makes it to the playoffs each year in the new format. The Pac-12 is now left with just 4 teams, which again are Cal, Stanford, Washington State, and Oregon State. The new CFP system essentially guarantees that one of those teams would make the playoffs every year. Now, clearly these decisions of teams leaving the Pac-12 for other conferences were money decisions, not competition decisions, because this new 18-team Big Ten is going to have Oregon and Washington facing off against teams like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, almost every year in conference or regular season play. They're going to have to face these teams to contend for a Big Ten championship and thus a playoff spot. If they were to stay in the Pac-12, their path to the playoffs would have been significantly easier, but again, clearly that was not the driving factor. Now, the Pac-12 is going to desperately claw for its life. It's going to try to recruit new members. The only ones that make geographical sense, though, which, I mean, at this point clearly is not the priority, but if we're going to go down that route, are going to be Mountain West teams. And the best ones that come to mind are Boise State, maybe San Diego State, maybe Utah State. And this isn't Mountain West, but you could add Gonzaga, but that doesn't help you at all in football. That's a good basketball decision. Honestly, I think the best decision is just having those 4 remaining teams in the Pac-12 merge with the Mountain West, come on over and join, but it wouldn't be a power conference anymore. There's also been speculation that Cal and Stanford just go independent because think about it, those 2 schools are very well-renowned academic institutions. It's going to hurt, but people are still going to want to attend those schools because of their academic prestige. Going independent probably isn't the worst decision if they decided to do that. And then as for your other two teams, Oregon State and Washington State, maybe just the two of them join the Mountain West. And regardless whether it's just the two of them or all four of them, if they went to the Mountain West, that would significantly help them too. The Mountain West, they're getting more members. They're getting members who used to be at the Power 5 level. It would be really helpful for them. The Pac-12 is done. That is the short of what has happened over the last few days. We do not have a Power 5 anymore. We have a Power 4. And the ACC is probably shaking in its boots right now. The president of Florida State, Rick McCullough, said publicly on August 2nd that the school would consider leaving the conference unless there's a radical change to revenue distribution. I remember when Oklahoma and Texas left for the SEC or announced that they were going to leave, people started spinning the rumor mill of Clemson and Florida State joining the SEC, and maybe that's something we see happen in the next few years. So to recap all of that, here is a timeline that I threw together of the Pac-12's collapse. June 2022, UCLA and USC announced departure from Pac-12 to Big Ten. Pac-12 goes from 12 to 10 teams. July 2023, Colorado announces departure from Pac-12 to Big 12. Pac-12 goes from 10 to 9 teams. August 2023, Arizona State, and Utah announced departure from Pac-12 to Big 12. Oregon and Washington announced departure from Pac-12 to Big 10. Pac-12 goes from 9 teams to 4. All of that happened over 1 year, 14 months to be exact. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, let's look at the Big 12. The Big 12 took a massive hit in July of 2021 when it was announced that Oklahoma and Texas would leave them for the SEC. Those two teams were easily their flagship members, and most everyone thought that the Big 12 was going to die as a conference when that happened. But here's what they have done in the 2 years since then. September 2021, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF all announced that they are going to join the Big 12. 3 of them were leaving the American Conference, 1 beginning competition in a conference after most recently being independent. And that's all going to happen this upcoming season in the 2023-24 season. You will see them participate in Big 12 play. July 2023, Colorado is going to join the Big 12, and August 2023, Arizona State, and Utah announced they're going to join the Big 12. So in 2-3 years, the Big 12 dropped from 10 teams to 8 and then doubled to 16. Well, that's the news. That's what we know. That's what we have. That's everything that's going to happen and or might happen. So now I want to have some fun for the rest of this episode. All of this conference realignment has me thinking about the future of college sports, and especially college football. NIL has already changed the game in a way that college sports, especially college football, are essentially being treated as professional now. So if that's the case, why not model the college football season after the current format of the NFL season? Now, I want to go ahead and clarify that I don't think that this has a chance of happening at all. There's way too many hurdles to jump over, way too many complicated decisions that would need to be made. It would require a lot. But regardless, this is just a fun thought experiment and a hypothetical way that the college football season could be modeled. So, how many teams are in the NFL? 32. Let's put 32 college football teams in a league. We'll just call it the league for the sake of this video. At the end of the season, it would not be 18 weeks. It would just be your normal 12-week college football season. Your top 14 finishers make the playoffs. Your top 2 seeds would get bye weeks. Seed 3 would play 14, 4 would play 13, 5 would play 12, etc. The teams would be reseeded after round 1 and only after round 1. So now the new 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, etc. Every other team in college football, so the other 101, would be put in, I'm just going to say the rest right now. I don't have league names. But at the end of every season, the bottom 3 finishers in the league, the teams that finish in positions 30, 31, and 32, they're going to be sent down to the rest. and the teams that finish in the top 3 of the rest will move up to the league for the next season. And this process would repeat and be implemented and used every season. It is exactly like how English football pyramids work. In the Premier League, you have 20 teams. The teams that are in 18th, 19th, and 20th drop down to the championship, and the teams in the championship who finish 1, 2, and 3 move up to the Premier League. It would be that exact process. And the thought process behind this is it rewards teams who do well, and it penalizes teams who perform poorly. It's essentially a win in you're in, or a lose and you're out. You have to prove yourself as a program, and everybody in the league is on the chopping block, and everybody in the rest is in contention for moving on up. Now, the next question is, who are those 32 inaugural teams? Who, in the first season of implementation, who would be the 32 teams to start in the league? So I chose these members based off of a set of rankings or criteria, and that is the most wins since the start of the BCS era, which was the 1998-99 season. And you have to have played all of those seasons in FBS football. So that's 25 years. Now, why? Well, first, why that date, 1998? Well, the 98-99 season was the first season where there was a designated championship game at the end of the year. There was a game that if you won it, you were the national champion. Before that, it was just whoever finished at number 1 in the rankings was the national champion. 1998 was our first BCS national championship game, our first game to determine a national champion. So I want to start there. Plus, I feel like 1998 was both recent enough to have reflected who have been good teams in modern day, but also far enough to where we have a pretty large data set. We have 25 seasons worth of win totals to look at. Now, the FBS criteria is simply because teams have moved up from the FCS level into FBS, and teams have moved down from FBS into FCS. Not as common, but it has happened a few times. And I want to stick with that because there are teams like James Madison or Sam Houston who have been very successful at the FCS level, but they haven't been doing it at the FBS level. And that's not their fault. That's just the league that they were in. So I want to separate them just to simply give the benefit to these FBS teams. And hey, if James Madison and Sam Houston put up an insane season in the rest, finished in the top 3, well, guess what? They get to move up anyway. This is just the inaugural season. So here are those top 32 teams. First, we have Ohio State with 265 wins. We actually have a 3-way tie for second between Alabama, Oklahoma, and Boise State, all with 257. Next is Georgia with 252, Clemson with 236, LSU 230, Oregon and Wisconsin with 229, Florida State and USC with 222, TCU with 221, Florida with 220, Texas with 219, Virginia Tech with 217, Michigan with 213, Utah with 208, Notre Dame with 206, Miami and Penn State both with 205, BYU with 204, Auburn with 200, Oklahoma State with 197, Kansas State with 196, Louisville also with 196, Cincinnati with 193, Marshall also has 193, Toledo has 191, Nebraska and West Virginia have 190, and Tennessee and Iowa both have 189. That's the list. That's the criteria. Now, I do want to just address something. Not every list is going to be perfect, but the goal of this was to just be as objective as possible. How many games have you won in the last 25 years, and have you been in the FBS for all 25 years? The two that will probably catch you as no way, don't put them in there, are Marshall and Toledo. And let's look. The teams that finished in 33rd and 34th are Texas A&M and Michigan State. So essentially, they're the first two out. I feel like most people would say put Texas A&M and Michigan State in instead of Marshall and Toledo. And you're probably right. Those two programs are probably better than Toledo and Marshall. However, if we do that, we're getting to a point where the data no longer becomes objective. You're throwing in your own opinion. We're getting subjective data, and that's not the goal. The goal is to be as objective as possible, and Marshall and Toledo have won more games in the last 25 years than Texas A&M and Michigan State have. I know the strength of schedule is different, but that's just how the numbers pan out. And also, again, just remember that this is just the list for who that first season would be. 3 of these teams are not going to be in the league for the following season, and 3 teams who I did not name would be in it for the following season. Anyways, that was just a fun side project I had been working on as I was writing this script. If we're treating college sports like pro sports, what the heck? Let's model college football after NFL football just for fun. That is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope I taught you something. I hope I caught you up successfully. We are really witnessing history right here. The Pac-12 is exploding. The Pac-12 has been around since 1915. I mean, it was the Pac-10 at one point, but this has been a power conference for a very long period of time, and we're watching it fade away right in front of us. So thank you for tuning in. Football season is right around the corner. I'm super excited for kickoff, and I hope to see you back next time.